Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We've got a great video for you today. We're going to be answering one of those common retirement planning questions, and that is, how much do I actually need to retire comfortably in Canada? To answer this question, we're going to pull up some actual financial planning software. We're going to look at three different scenarios. We're going to look at a $1 million retirement plan versus a $2 million retirement plan versus a $3 million retirement plan. We're going to be looking at things like retirement spending, retirement success rate, the chance of running out of money, how much tax they might pay in retirement, and also if we're triggering any old age security clawbacks. We're going to be comparing these three scenarios to see how much they can spend and how comfortable their retirement is. Now, my name is Owen. I'm an advice-only financial planner, a CFP, and I'm the founder of Advice. And let's jump right into this case study. So let's get started with their situation. We've got Steve and Diane. That's who we're building this plan for. They're both age 55, and they did retire this year. So they retired at age 55. They want to spend at a minimum about $5,000 per month. That's their core retirement spending. But of course, the question is, depending on how much financial assets they have, how much more can they spend on top of this amount? So that's about $60,000 a year in core retirement spending. Now, they're living off their cash and savings right now, and they're eager to get a decumulation plan in place. They don't have a decumulation plan right now. They don't know where they should be pulling money from, how much, what their tax consequences are. So they're eager to get a decumulation plan in place. They have CPP and OAS that they're expecting at age 65. CPP is around $1,000 a month, but it's not the maximum. So it's important they've done a detailed CPP estimate. They're going to get around $1,000 a month, but remember, they're retiring early at age 55, so they won't get the maximum CPP benefit. There's going to be a number of zero earning years in there. Now, for old age security, we've assumed the maximum, so they're getting $728 a month. This means combined at age 65, they're going to get about $3,400 a month. That's about $41,000 a year. But remember, that's at age 65, and they're retiring at 55. So we've got a 10-year gap at a minimum there, depending on when they start those benefits. But they've got a 10-year gap where we need to backfill with their financial assets. So that's going to be an important part of the planning process, is how are they filling that gap between 55 and whenever these benefits begin. Now, their assets include a house worth $750,000. In the $1 million retirement plan, they've got savings worth about $30,000, a TFSA, combined TFSA is worth about $400,000, and then RSP registered assets worth about $600,000. So a bit over $1 million, but their core financial assets, investment assets for retirement are $1 million. In the $2 million retirement plan, same savings, same TFSA assets, but we've assumed that they've got a larger registered account, larger RSPs. We've assumed that maybe they're higher income pre-retirement and they've really maximized their registered accounts before retirement. Now, in the $3 million retirement plan, we're assuming the same savings in TFSA, a larger RSP balance, but not too much larger. And then we've assumed that they've spilled over into non-registered investments before retirement. So they've maxed out their RSP and TFSA, they've maxed out all of their tax advantage space, and now they've kind of switched over into non-registered investments in the $3 million retirement plan. Now, in all situations, their asset allocation is 80-20. Remember, they need that money to grow for a long period of time. They're retiring early at age 55. They're going to have a long retirement period, so they still need to retain a little bit of sort of aggressiveness within their portfolio so that that continues to grow over their 30 to 40 year retirement period. We've also assumed low investment fees, so 0.25%, 0.25. This is in line with like an all-in-one ETF portfolio. So we're assuming 80-20 all-in-one ETF. Now let's take a look at their plan. Okay, so here we can see the $1 million retirement plan at age 55. But before we get into the details, let me show you how we set this up. So here, if we go to income, we've used the simple planning option. Now, they don't have any employment income. Again, they're fully retired at 55. We're assuming that their plan extends until age 92. So we've got a long retirement planning period here, but no employment income, no other income other than investment income at the moment. For expenses, we've got simple planning mode here. We've got 3 expense snapshots set up, 3 expense phases. We've got go, slow go, and no go. But in simple planning mode, we've just assumed that $60,000 a year in core retirement spending. So in that $1 million retirement plan, that's what we're starting with, and we'll see how much more we can add to that retirement plan. So that's very easy. Cash flow, no detail because we did simple planning. But if we go to assets, we can see their total financial assets. So again, simple planning mode. We've got their checking and savings, so 30,000 in total. We've got their RSP RIF balance, so we've got 600,000 there. TFSA investment balance, so we've got 400,000 there. So that's that $1 million retirement plan that we're starting with. $750,000 in home value, bit of TFSA room, but we've assumed that they've used up all of their RSP room. No debts at all, so nothing here. Net worth, we've got our 1.8 million in total with the home value. And then in terms of insurance, we're not too worried about that. We're not running survivor scenarios, but if we had insurance, we'd add it here. In tax and benefits, we've used simple planning mode, but we would recommend doing a detailed CPP estimate. Again, we're assuming here $1,000 a month for Steve and Diane, but we should do a detailed estimate because they're retiring early and they'll have a number of zero earning years there. But here we've been somewhat safe. We've assumed $1,000 per month at age 65. For their investment plan, like we talked about, we've got 0.25% in fees, and we've got an 80-20 asset allocation between equities, stocks, and fixed income bonds. So that's our rate of return assumptions. And let's jump into the plan and see what this looks like. So let's take a look at the initial plan. Now, if you want to set up a retirement plan like this yourself, you can go to advice.ca. You can get access to the software platform, the advice platform, the AI strategies, our community forum for support, questions, and discussion, as well as our bi-monthly webinars. You can do that all for just $9 a month or $49 a year. If you don't have a retirement plan set up yet, we would highly encourage you to do so. Now let's take a look at their initial projection here. So we've got their retirement income. We can see they're drawing down registered first. They'd switch to TFSA after. They've got their CPP and OAS phasing in at age 65. First year is a little bit lower because it starts after their month of birth. We've got their spending. Again, we're doing $60,000 a year all the way through in that base case scenario. We've got their net worth, fairly heavy drawdown here. Again, they don't have CPP and OAS starting until 65 in this case, and they want to spend $60,000 a year. So in early retirement, their withdrawal rate is quite high. Actually, we can go down to the table and scroll to the right here, and we can see their withdrawal rate. They're in the 6% range when we include tax and all those other things. So it's a high withdrawal rate. That does drop at 65. It does go below 4% at age 65, but that high withdrawal rate in early retirement is a bit of a challenge in this $1 million retirement plan. So they're drawing down their financial assets. Ends up, they get rid of all of their registered assets by 65. So it's a nice RSP meltdown. They've got just TFSA towards the end, and then it ends up growing a little bit over time, likely because their withdrawal rate is so low after CPP and OAS get started. Overall success rate 85%, but that early retirement period is very risky. So if we look at historical stock returns, bond returns, and inflation rates, that early drawdown period is incredibly risky due to the high withdrawal rate. At age 65, things starting to flatten out, but those first 10 years, given their $1 million financial assets, their $60,000 spending goal, those first few years are quite risky there in terms of sequence of returns. So there might be some things to do there in terms of improving the success rate, but overall, as an initial retirement plan, it's not bad. They can spend that $60,000 a year all the way throughout retirement. There's just not a lot of wiggle room here. Again, their success rate is quite low. They're spending quite a bit of their financial assets as a withdrawal percentage in early retirement. So there's a bit of challenge here in terms of the $1 million retirement plan at age 65 with $60,000 a year in retirement spending. So now let's take a look at a $2 million retirement plan. We're going to make a copy of this scenario. We're going to add some financial assets to get up to $2 million. Let's rename this $2 million at age 55. We're going to use the advanced options down here, and we're just going to change the starting balance. Instead of a 300,000, we're going to do 800,000. So we're going to add 500,000 to each of these balances, giving us an extra $1 million in total. Now, the only other thing we're going to do here is we're going to add some other spending. We're going to add some additional spending. With another $1 million, you could reasonably expect we'd be able to add 40,000 or so per year in retirement spending. But let's assume that their core spending goes up by 20,000. So let's assume that from 60,000, their core retirement spending goes up to 80,000 a year. We're going to put age 100. but really it's going to cap it at that 92 age at the end of the plan. So here we've got 20,000 a year going all the way through the entire plan. Let's recalculate that first to see what that looks like. We've got the extra assets and the extra spending, and we're still at a 99% success rate. So here, $80,000 a year in retirement spending with a net worth of about $2 million starting at age 55 seems quite reasonable. Let's actually add some more spending to try to get to that same 84-85% success rate that we had before. So let's go to modify retirement spending. Let's filter by lifetime spending, and let's see what we can do here. So we can add go-go spending of $12,000 a year. So here now we can start to layer on some initial additional spending in early retirement, and we can get to that same success rate of about 84-85% that we had previously. So let's recalculate and see what that looks like. So now we're at that 84% success rate. Again, we can see there's a bit of risk here in early retirement, but not nearly the same as before. So interestingly, they're less reliant on that early retirement period. There's more financial assets there. So that's an interesting insight. We'll have to compare these scenarios. And here we've got more retirement spending, so $92,000 a year. Interestingly, it's not the full $40,000. So we added $1 million of retirement spending. With the 4% rule, you would think that that would add $40,000 a year in retirement spending. We had $60,000 before, so you'd think that that would be $100,000. But here with the same success rate, we're at about 92. So again, there's tax there, there's other considerations, but it looks like a solid retirement plan with the same success rate as before. We've just now increased the financial assets. We've increased that to $2 million. And that's helped us increase early retirement spending until the age of 75. We've increased spending to $92,000 a year, then down to $80,000 a year. So interesting, we weren't able to push spending maybe as high as we might assume if we were using something rough like the 4% rule. Now let's make a copy of this scenario. Let's do a $3 million retirement plan and see what that looks like. So let's make a copy here. Let's rename this scenario a $3 million retirement plan. And let's do the same thing. Let's add some additional retirement assets. So let's go down here. Let's increase this again. Let's go up by 300,000 in this case. We're going to do 1.1 million in RSP assets. But again, we're assuming in the $3 million retirement plan, we're assuming that they have some non-registered assets, that they maxed out their TFSA and RSP. So let's add 200,000 for each of them. And let's assume that there's a bit of capital gains there. So we've got an adjusted cost base of 150,000, 50,000 of unrealized capital gains in the non-registered account. So let's save this. Now let's do the same thing with spending again. So we had added 20,000 in the other case when we added $1 million. Let's add 40,000 and just see what that looks like. So let's cascade that down to the end of the plan. And let's now take a look and see what this retirement plan looks like. Remember, we still get that extra $12,000, but let's see if we can push that up any higher. So here, if we recalculate, so we're at 92% success rate, so it does suggest there's some room there. We've got the non-registered drawing down, we've got some registered withdrawals and early retirement, 112, but lots of financial assets towards the end of the plan. Certainly seems like there's some room to draw down more financial assets here and good success rates. So let's take a look at that retirement spending. If we increase it by another 12,000 a year, we can get to the same 84% success rate. So let's enable that one and let's recalculate. Let's see that 84% success rate. Again, less risk in that early retirement period. So that's interesting. We've got the income here. So we're starting with a bit of mixture of registered and non-registered withdrawals. We're switching to registered. We've got the TFSA that grows throughout retirement. We could draw down those registered assets a bit faster, so there's probably some opportunity here. We've got an estate tax of $250,000, but overall success rate is quite good, and they're spending $124,000 a year. So the other one was $92,000 a year. Again, now we've added $32,000 a year in additional retirement spending. Interestingly, we've got the non-registered account, which doesn't trigger as much tax. When we went from $1 million to $2 million, it was all registered assets. So we were triggering a lot of tax when we were making those withdrawals. Here, we're triggering less tax. We're also front loading that spending. So By the time they get to 75, it drops to 100,000 a year from 124,000 a year. So in terms of base retirement spending, they're not going up by the full 40,000. They went up from 60,000 to 80,000 to now 100,000, 75, age 75 and beyond. Interesting scenario. So let's use the compare functionality. Let's compare these three together. Now let's compare these three scenarios. Now remember, we haven't done any improvements to these scenarios. We haven't used the AI strategies yet other than for spending. So remember, we can still improve some of these scenarios by using those AI strategies. We'll do that in a second. But in terms of comparison, let's take a look at these three. So we've got the net worth over time. We draw down a little bit more heavily in that lower spending scenario with the 1 million in financial assets, but then things sort of flatline after that or even increase slightly. We can see it's slightly different here with the $3 million retirement plan, and then it starts to flatline after 75 when their spending drops. Now let's take a look at spending over time. So here we've got that higher spending. So with the $1 million plan, we have 60,000 a year all the way through. With the $2 million retirement plan at age 55, we're spending an extra 32,000 in early retirement and then an extra 20,000 in late retirement. And then in the $3 million retirement plan, it's an extra 64,000 versus the $1 million plan, or an extra 32,000 versus the $2 million plan. So we're up to 124,000 in early retirement. And then the late retirement, we're dropping down to 100,000. So this is just incrementally 20,000 more in late retirement. So we can definitely front load spending a lot more when we've got more financial assets. So that's interesting. In the $60,000, $1 million retirement plan, we've just got the flat $60,000 all the way through. We can't really push it any higher there. Now let's look at the metrics over time. So lifetime spending, we've got 2.2 million, 3.2 million, 4.2 million. So interestingly, in each case, we're actually adding $1 million. So $1 million more financial assets adds $1 million in more spending with relatively the same success rate. So 85, 84% success rate in each of these cases. That's probably coincidence. I don't think that's that purely driven by that $1 million. A bit more coincidence. Depends on the retirement age. But here at age 55, that happens to be how it worked out. Lifetime tax in the $1 million scenario is very low at $94,000 a year. So really efficient drawdown of financial assets already. And then at the $2 million plan, we've got $400,000 in tax. In the $3 million plan, $1 million in lifetime tax. Larger estate value. Again, we've got more spending. So even though we're spending more with that success rate, we're leaving more behind as well. CPP and OAS are all the same in all of these scenarios because we've just assumed age 65. And then in terms of average withdrawal rate, so a little bit higher in the $1 million retirement plan and definitely much higher in that early retirement period. That's probably something we should go back and take a look at is what does that early retirement withdrawal rate look like? So super interesting here. Lots of interesting insights. Estate tax 0 and 0 in the $1 and $2 million retirement plan. So we can do a really good job at drawing down financial assets. But in that $3 million retirement plan, there's probably some room to draw those assets down maybe a little bit more efficiently. Now let's go back to projections. I want to take a look at that withdrawal rate. I find that interesting. So in the $3 million retirement plan, in early retirement, let's take a look at the withdrawal rate that we've got. So even though we're spending more, we've got a fairly low withdrawal rate. The withdrawal rate actually only goes up when we start to draw heavily on the registered assets, and then it goes back down when we get some tax credits, CPP and OAS at age 65. So interestingly, in the $3 million retirement plan, even though we're spending a lot more, the withdrawal rate is actually quite a bit more reasonable. Let's go up to the $2 million retirement plan. Let's take a look at the same withdrawal rate here. So this withdrawal rate higher, 5%, goes up a little bit here at age 60. No, it keeps going up and then drops at 65. So at age 65, CPP and OAS kick in. We've got some tax credits, age amount tax credit, pension income tax credit. So here we've got a drop in withdrawal rate to a more reasonable 4%. But a little bit higher here, so a little bit more risk in that early retirement period for sure. And then if we go back to that $1 million retirement plan, just to compare, they had that really high withdrawal rate. So 6 to 7, peaking at 8 or 9% in early retirement. Again, they're drawing down a lot of their financial assets, waiting for CPP and OAS to begin. Once they begin, their withdrawal rate is very reasonable. So as long as they can get to 65, their plan is quite successful. It's a very reasonable withdrawal rate. But interestingly, they've got a very high withdrawal rate in the early retirement period. So lots of sequence of returns risk for that $1 million retirement plan in that early 10 years between 55 and 65. Interesting insight. Really depends on how much financial assets you have, what your chance of running out of money is, and what your withdrawal rate can be and how much you can spend in early retirement. It's not proportional, as we just saw. It's not proportional. The more money you have, you can withdraw more, but also your withdrawal rate as a percentage of assets is more reasonable over time. Very interesting. Now, the last thing I want to do here is I want to improve all three of these scenarios using the AI strategies. So we're going to come down here. We're going to filter. We're going to check them all except for modify retirement spending, survivor scenario, and asset allocation. We can always come back to those. But let's focus on the decumulation strategies. Let's focus on the top strategies here. So we've already got it filtered by after-tax estate value. We're going to be selecting the top one each time, recalculating, and then see what happens next. So here we've got draw enough from registered assets to fill up the first tax bracket. I suspect we're spreading out some of that tax here. Let's take a look and see what happens. So yeah, we're spreading out tax a little bit more. Now we want to draw enough for Steve's first tax bracket for the using up all of the available tax credits. So now we've got a better sort of drawdown of financial assets. We're using up all those tax credits in early retirement. We're also using them up in later retirement. We're mixing drawdown here in early retirement between the TFSA and the registered account, keeping their tax very low, pushing that tax out later. Actually improved their success rate by 5%, interestingly. Here we've got Diane, we want to delay CPP. Interesting, not until age 70 here. It's suggesting age 68. So let's do that and see what that looks like. See if that improves our plan at all. 91% success rate. OAS at age 68 for Diane. Interesting, so let's add that as well. Not a huge improvement to the plan, so we could stop there, but let's go through and select all of the top strategies here and see what that looks like. Now we've got CPP at age 67 for Steve, so let's enable that one as well. We're at 90% success rate. And now OAS at 67 for Steve as well. So let's do that here. And let's see what else we've got. So we've got a little bit more drawdown of registered assets, more CPP and OAS once they start. And I think that's it. We've optimized the plan. We've gotten as high as we can in after-tax estate value. Let's take a look and see what we've got. We've got the same spending, so that's no different. But now we can add to their financial assets later in retirement. We're a little bit more of a drawdown on financial assets, but now we're spreading out that tax burden. We're drawing down those registered assets over time. So we're spreading out the tax burden rather than front loading it like we did before. That helps with the success rate. Here we draw down those financial assets, but because we're not doing just registered in early retirement, because we're mixing withdrawals with the TFSA, we actually have to pay very little tax. So now in terms of sequence of returns risk, we're actually not drawing as much from the portfolio because we don't have to pay tax. So this actually improved their success rate, improved their early retirement drawdown. Bit of a counterintuitive insight, but an interesting insight nonetheless. So this is a good plan. We've definitely helped, in this case, improve the success rate to 90%. Let's do this for the other two plans and then we'll compare them again. So let's switch to the $2 million retirement plan and let's go through the same exercise down here. So we're going to choose the top strategies. We've got our filters still set up. Let's just choose the top ones and recalculate, and we're going to see what happens here. So here, the top one is to delay CPP for Diane until age 69. Again, interestingly, not age 70. So let's do that, push that out. CPP at 69 for Steve as well is the top strategy. That adds about $30,000 to the estate assets. So let's do that as well. OAS at 68, not 69, but 68. So let's enable that one. And let's see what else pops up here in terms of top strategies. OAS at age 68 for Steve. Let's do that one as well. Not as high a success rate as the other one. And now we're at the top strategy. So interestingly, no registered meltdowns, no RSP meltdowns. So let's take a look. So we've got lots of registered assets, which remember we added a lot of registered assets, not necessarily TFSA. 92,000 spending early retirement. Now we're drawing down a little bit more evenly over time, but we're delaying. So I guess with the CPP and OAS being pushed out, we've got more of a chance to draw down registered assets. It's probably the advantage in this case is we're drawing down those assets to a smaller amount over time. Success rate, tiny bit better at 87%, but not a huge change, not as much as the 5% change we saw in that $1 million scenario. But we still added quite a bit to estate value, so that's interesting. Let's take a look at what this looks like with the $3 million retirement plan. So let's switch to the $3 million retirement plan. Let's go through the same exercise using the AI strategies. Different here. So here we're maximizing contribution room in the TFSA using non-registered balance. Makes sense. We've got registered assets here, so why wouldn't we keep maximizing that TFSA in early retirement, shifting that money over? Let's see what else pops up here. CPP at 70 in this case. Maybe more registered assets. We need more time to draw them down in early retirement. So let's enable that one here as well. That improves our after-tax estate value. CPP at 70 for Steve, so let's do that here too. Let's see what else pops up. Here we've got some RSP meltdown, so different than before. Here we've got some RSP meltdown up to that second tax bracket for Steve. So let's enable this one here. Adds another 20,000 or so to estate value. OAS at 69 for Diane, so let's enable that one. Adds another 10 grand almost. So let's do that here as well. OAS at 69 for Steve, so let's enable that one. OAS clawback threshold, so let's enable that one and see what this looks like. Let's see what else pops up here in terms of strategies. That looks to be like we're right at the top there. But let's enable this last one. Now it looks like we want to start CPP at 69 for Diane, so let's enable that one here as well. And let's see what else pops up. We've got registered withdrawals for Diane. And now we're at the top strategy here. So now we've got the top plan over time. We've got more tax in early retirement, splitting that out a little bit, but drawing down more of their financial assets by the end of the plan. Their estate tax now is $44,000. I think in the other scenario when we first did it was $250,000. So much less estate tax in this case. And overall, still 85% success rate. So we didn't improve it as much as the other two scenarios, but we definitely helped the estate tax in optimizing total estate value in this case. We could probably add a little bit more spending if we wanted to, because we're ending up with a $2 million TFSA in this case. Now let's take a look at the compare section and let's see what this looks like across all three. So let's compare these three scenarios. So we're drawing down assets more quickly in the higher asset scenario. Remember, we're delaying CPP and old age security in those scenarios a little bit further out. So we're drawing down a little bit more heavily on the registered assets in the higher asset scenario. So let's compare the metrics here. So we've got the same spending all the way across, so that's no different. But let's take a look at tax. So tax, we've actually got more tax in the $1 million retirement plan, but we've got a better after-tax estate value. So interestingly, if we were to have optimized for tax, we actually wouldn't have had the best plan because the previous plan had a better total lifetime tax number. So in this case, by looking at the after-tax estate value, even though we're paying more tax, we're doing it because we've got more assets. Now the opposite is true here in the $3 million retirement plan. We've got less tax that we're paying over the lifetime and a higher estate value. So it really depends. Every situation is different. We've got their average withdrawal rate here. We've got their success rate, which we were able to improve in the $1 million retirement plan by about 5%. In the other retirement plans, it didn't go up as much. So there was definitely more impact here in the $1 million retirement plan. We're able to do a better drawdown, especially in that early retirement period between 55 and 65. Now we hope you enjoyed that video. That was a lot of information, lots of detail, super interesting to see how different those three retirement plans were, both in terms of spending, but also the AI strategies, what we ended up doing in terms of improving their plan. Very interesting to see how much they could draw in early retirement versus late retirement. Even though we added $1 million each time to each of those retirement plans, we weren't adding $40,000 in spending throughout the entire plan. So again, that 4% rule, good rule of thumb, but kind of breaks apart when we look at actual retirement planning in some actual retirement planning software. Thanks so much for watching. If you don't have a retirement plan yet, we'd highly encourage you to put one in place. Go to advice.ca, get your retirement plan started. It's just $9 a month or $49 for the year. Thanks again for watching. We'd love it if you like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.